The real question was naturally the 27, 28.
I answered
And
my
how to answer that
27
question.
no and 28
I answered
with a
no,
blank.
no.
I answered yes, no.
That I
no to
felt
both
that
of them.
no was the logical.
My answer was no, yes.
Yes, yes.
Let's
My mom answered
declare no, and maybe then
yes,
they'll
yes,
be spared.
on 27 and 28.
And also we'll keep the family together.
The first question was whether I'd be willing to fight for this country, which I said yes. But the second question was, would I renounce my allegiance to the Emperor of Japan? Well, if I'd said yes to that, then that would mean I had that allegiance. Now, if I said no, then I was being disloyal to this country. But at that time, I felt my honest reaction was no. So I answered yes, no. Those who said no, no were then later shipped to the lake.
Well, my mom answered yes, yes on 27 and 28. But with my dad, I told him, because Dad and Mom didn't sign my guardianship over to my aunties, and I was forced to go into camp. He had to write what I told him. It was his turn to, So he and I both said, give me the reason for interning Dad. And then for 28, we said, we'll answer 27 after we got the answer for 27. For that, Dad and I got blackballed. And then we got sent to Thule, so the whole family went to Thule.
I wrote yes, yes. I was very leery about the way the questions were phrased, but I said, what the hell, this, I know I don't want to go to war right now with my wife pregnant and a little baby, and but I said, taking the broad view, I want to demonstrate my loyalty by saying yes, yes.
My mother had decided that we were going to go to Japan. Said, we're not going to stay here. We're going to go to Japan. And so I had to sign no on that. And that was that. And the counselor called me and says, now, you know what this means? I said, yes, it means I'm going to Japan. And if I sign yes, then it means that my family will go to Japan and I will stay here. So I'm not going to stay here by myself. So I went to Japan. I'm going to Japan. So I joined that group that was to be sent to Thule Lake.
This is, will you forswear allegiance to Japan and swear allegiance to America? Then another question was, will you bear arms for America? Then I answered no to both of them. And the sergeant says, son, you know what you're doing? I said, look, I said, when I registered for the draft, I was classified as 1A, and then you guys turned around and classified me as 4C. That's enemy alien. I said, what the hell is enemy alien doing in the U.S. Army? And I got no allegiance to Japan. I've never been there. So I left it at that. Then they said, all the no-nos, we're going to ship them to Thule Lake, we're going to ship them to Japan. I got nobody in Japan. I'm not going to Japan, so I had to change it, get a lawyer and change it to yes, yes, yeah.
Those questions to me was, the more I looked at it, the more stupider it seemed to me. So I thought it was not only stupid, but sort of demeaning for us to have to answer that. So I answered it in this manner. I said, under the present conditions and circumstances, I'm unable to answer these questions, which was my feeling at that time.
Well, those questions that they asked me were such that I would have had, in effect, to renounce my allegiance to Japan. Because I had only Japanese citizenship. If I had agreed to those statements, the desired response to those stupid questions they had, I would have been giving up my Japanese citizenship. So I was all set to go, but fortunately, they changed the question one day before I had to show up and sign that thing. So by the time, the day I showed up, the only question they asked was, If released, will you promise not to do anything to impede the American war effort? And that I was willing to sign.
And yet this political entity called the government tells me, you're not part of us. You're an enemy alien. And we're going to treat you like one, which they did with incarceration and selective service. And they said, well, they don't want me. Oh, fine, I don't want them either. Kind of vernacular thinking. And so out of that, I felt that no was a logical response with the added component of, well, if you don't want me, I don't want you either. So, you know, fall at a FU kind of a reaction.
You know, the more I thought of it, the more I kept feeling, you know, we're not going to go to Japan. And if none of us volunteers, that's going to give Roosevelt all the ammunition he needs. See, in them days, I didn't know who was in back of putting this full 42nd together. And so that was one of the things I brought up, and I said, I'd say nobody volunteers out of any of the camps. I said, what can Roosevelt say? Everybody says, well, he can say that we're more loyal to Japan than the United States. So I said, well, do you guys plan to live here all the time? Do you plan to go back to Japan after this is over? So some of them were saying, no, I wouldn't be able to make it in Japan. I can't hardly speak Japanese, and all this came up, you know. Finally, everybody started saying, well, if we plan to settle in this country, we better be able to prove ourselves. And that's when it came out to be that we would all volunteer.
Out of our group, we probably had the most people saying no. I think about 4 or 5 of our group. And then at the same time, we had 3, 4 people volunteering. So, you know, it's torn. Like, at that time, I was, 17, so I was too young to volunteer. Some of the other people that didn't volunteer, they got drafted or... So there was a break there, and of course, when they went with a 442, some of them got killed, and a lot of their friends got killed. So, you know, they were very patriotic, or they felt that they're and of course, people that went with no that landed up at McNeil Island, they were felt that they were correct in not, you know, going. So, but what happened was after the war, when everybody came back to Seattle, that was when that I had no feelings one way or the other. They were my friends. So whether they went and volunteered or whether they went to prison, I mean, they were my OTs, they were my friends. But not all of our group felt like that. And I had never realized it until when we were in camp. We had a big basketball tournament. And so we had teams coming from Chicago and the various different areas. And the team that came back from Chicago, a lot of them were the OTs that came back. So I thought I'd have a big party for them, you know, to get together. Well, that's when I found out that there was really a split. That the people that said no felt very, very that they were going to be discriminated against. They felt bad. And the vets that came back had a very, very strong feeling about how they didn't, you know, volunteer or didn't serve. And there was a big split, and there, up to this day, there still is a split between some of the people, not all of them. Some have mellowed out.
Reconciled.
Yeah.
Perhaps the most stupid, the second most stupid thing was this questionnaire for leave clearance. The motives were not really bad. The WRA, it was a bureaucratic organization. They said, well, let's find, we can let loyal Japanese Americans go out. So they hand out this goddamn questionnaire, as if that were a way to do it. In addition, they didn't bother to make up their own questionnaire, but they simply adapted a questionnaire that the military was already using to segregate draft age Japanese Americans who had volunteered, because there was no draft for Japanese Americans at that time, to make sure that they didn't get the, quote, wrong kinds into the armed forces. You can say about this or that. And they used this questionnaire and gave it to everybody. These were people who hadn't volunteered to do anything, and it created a whole series of problems. First of all, what Issei or women of any kind were to make of the question 27, are you willing to serve in the armed forces of the United States, etc. Well, that was just ridiculous. The whole question about forswearing allegiance, some people said, first of all, well, this means if I admit to this, this may be a trap. Remember, these are people who are in no way psychologically ready to trust and believe their government, because their government, they were American citizens, and they were in a concentration camp, not for any specific act, but simply for being Japanese. There was no way to get out. And it divided families. It was absolutely unnecessary. It created fears. There were people who didn't want to go, as some people like to say, back to America. The America that they had left and been expelled from was seemed a very hostile place. Many had no assets. They'd lost most of what they had. So this just created all kinds of problems.